Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Manolo Concepcion. I am the new associate head coach at Eastern Illinois University. Today, we are accompanied by one of the best coaches that has ever coached in the NCAA, a Hall of Famer, a legend, Sue Gozansky. ¿Cómo estás, Sue?
Excelente, gracias.
Can you say a couple of words in Spanish for the people watching us in Latin America before we head into the English conversation?
Es un placer para estar en este programa. Admiro mucho Manolo y para mí es un honor para estar en este programa.
Oh, thank you so much for those words. For the ones that have been watching us for the past couple of weeks, we are using a different platform today. I had some technical issues, so we're going to be using Zoom today for this event. So again, I'm grateful for the opportunity of reaching all of you guys. Basically, what's going to happen today is we're going to learn a little bit about the background and experiences of Sue Gozansky, and we're also going to touch base on some important matters that have to do with the role of women and matters of discrimination and other things that I really want to talk about with the legend Sue Gozansky. Sue, can you tell me a little bit about your outstanding background as a multi-sport athlete at the highest level? How did that start?
Well, my dad was a professional softball player in Minnesota, so he was a great athlete. My mom said she was a great athlete, but I never really saw that. I sort of got my start when my mom won a cookie contest, and we won a tennis racket. And my brother and I started playing tennis because of that, and love sports. And as a graduate student, and in those years, you could play on the teams, so not just undergraduate, you could play as a graduate. And at UCLA, I played volleyball and basketball, and that was really my start, the defining moment of getting into volleyball. So I played at UCLA, and then I played on a club team with UCLA and went to what was called USVBA at that time, Open National. I won Rookie of the Year, and at that time they chose all-stars for the national team. So I got chosen for the national team. So all sort of lucky from my standpoint that I got to do it.
Who were the most influential mentors for you in that process, and why?
Yeah, interesting question, because as I grew up, I really didn't have coaches very much. I went undergraduate to Cal Poly Pomona, and they had a good program, but not a program at that time that was really elite. But I was excited just to have a coach. And some of our teams they were coached by women, but the ladies were smart enough to know at that time that they didn't have a huge background in these sports. So oftentimes we had male assistants who were great. I mean, but the women that coached at the time were great mentors, because they were very professional, and they had a great enthusiasm for women's sports. And for me, they were great mentors, even though they weren't really strong in each individual sport. So many of my Cal Poly coaches. And then at UCLA, I had a very strong female coach. So I learned a lot from her. And on the national teams, it was all male coaches. We didn't have any female coaches then. And one last thing, a very influential person for me was Moo Park, who was our Renegades club volleyball team coach. And he was from South Korea. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. I think he's living in Canada now, but he brought in that Asian style coaching and the really strong, difficult practices, but we learned so much from him. And I really, the first book that I wrote I have a lot of his drills, gave him credit. A lot of things that he did. He was definitely a great mentor for me.
And he emphasized a lot in block training, and making sure that that's the philosophy that was really strong in those times, and and a lot of repetition, training for a lot of hours. Tell me about that. Tell me about how was that for those times, and how do you think it has evolved?
Well, it was a lot of repetition, and I loved it, and I really believed that my skills were improved tremendously from that type of training. And I remember how difficult it was, but I was not going to give up. And I remember, as we hear this from some athletes, I ran over, threw up, came back, got right back into the drills. But it was a kind of demanding practices that forced you into working to be your very, very best that you could. And it really did train you in the skills. And something that we talk about that I learned is his English wasn't very good. So he did a whole lot. And so we did a lot. We didn't stay it all, and we didn't stand around listening to him explain and explain and explain, because his English wasn't that good. But now that we need to stop talking and players play. But my philosophy in regards to the use of those, because yes, today we're going the opposite direction, talking about playing more and scrimmaging more and letting the game teach the game. But in my opinion, I really like to use all the tools in the basket. I think that is one that's important, and depending on the level, what you need to do to get an athlete to learn the skills and to know how to play the game. Sometimes I think that repetition is really important, and but the combination of both is obviously the best.
I agree, and especially when the athletes are in the cognitive and a little bit in the beginning of associative stage of any skill, block training should be part of what we do in our training. I don't think there's a perfect balance between both, and I don't think it should be a versus, but more is like, how do we combine both elements? Do you feel that it has changed throughout time because of the information that we have available to us too?
Well, my coaching definitely is not the same as it was when I started. I've learned a lot over the years, and I continue to learn, because what I do now when I'm coaching the boys volleyball team at the high school, it's a combination of all the things that I've learned over the years, plus making some changes to get them to be motivated, maybe because for men's coaching, the men's team, they just can't handle all the repetitions. So unless it's a competition, of course, then it works really well. Just put a competition in any simple drill and they're loving it. But that's a little different than women in regards to that balance of drills versus playing. But yeah, my coaching at the beginning was definitely doing all those repetitious drills, and we didn't scrimmage as much. And now I understand that you definitely can be really good at block training, but as soon as you put that into a situation where more than one decision has to be made, it complicates it. And it's amazing how much it does complicate the situation when they have to choose between two things or three things, and they have moments to make that choice. So definitely have to bring that in right away. And I think at the same time, we need to be teaching to be smart and to make decisions and think. And I think that's important to do at a very young age as well, not wait till later on.
For the ones watching and maybe don't know, Sue Gozansky is an AVCA Hall of Famer. She spent 39 plus years coaching for the same university. She is a legend. She is an accomplished writer who also had a bestseller. So I think he's someone that knows what he's talking about and someone that we should be learning from. And one of the things that people talk about you is your ability to learn too. When do you feel that you went into that? When do you feel that as a master learner? Did someone did it for you? Like, did someone actually make you realize, or a moment in your life help you realize that that was the key to continue to get better?
Wow, I'm not sure I can think of someone right now, and maybe as we speak, I might be able to. For some reason, I've always just been interested in learning and getting better and better. And one of the comments that was made, because I have gone to tons of clinics, and I seem to be one of the coaches that has coached a lot, that's sitting there taking notes with everything else that's just beginning. And people have made that comment that, wow, Sue is sitting there taking notes, so I guess I better be taking.
Which is true. Which is true. Like, we have a coach in Puerto Rico named Israel Garcia, rest in peace, that taught us exactly the same thing. If he's doing it at any age, we have to actually be doing the same thing and following that type of example.
And I think maybe where I originally started thinking about this is in my progression as a coach. In the early days, the way you learned was doing volleyball camps in the summer all around the. So I did some of the first Olympic volleyball camps, and I had the great fortune to do these camps with Doug Beal and Terry Leskavich, Tate, any of the coaches you can think of. I probably have done camps with them, but in those days, we had the entire group come together, like in Lamoni, Iowa, in the heat of the summer, and one coach would talk about maybe blocking or spiking, and we'd all sit there and listen to that coach, and then we'd take our groups off to our court, and we'd talk that skill and have a drill to learn that skill. But we utilized what they were saying, and a lot of these people were coaching internationally and were at the top of their games, so we and I had the opportunity to listen to them and learn from them. And I would always write on my 3x5 cards at the end of the day what I learned from them. And I always asked my players I had them do a lot of writing. So what did they learn, or what was their mental state, or what obstacles did they overcome, or what obstacles did they have? You know, why were we successful, or why weren't we? And so I did a ton of writing. And so I tried to instill that same thing in them.
When you were talking about motor learning and Doug Beal, you know, and all these greats at that time, did people look at you guys and say, these people are crazy? What are they talking about? Let's just play volleyball. Like, because that was a revolutionary type of thinking where you were basing your teachings on the laws of learning. Tell me how the people take that at that moment.
Well, when we first began in the 70s, and I have to just tell a fun story about the 70s, because Marv Dunphy I met before he even started coaching volleyball, because Chuck Nelson, who played in the Olympics, was a neighbor of Marv's. And we had a camp up in Big Bear in California, Big Lake, and Marv came as the swim, the lifeguard. And so he's just learn there. But when we did those early, people just loved it. This was the first time they had these opportunities, the young kids and the coaches. We had a great time. We were crazy. We did dumb things. We did fun. But the learning was tremendous, and people just loved it. I think those discussions about you maybe are crazy teaching some of these things probably come more now today.
Oh,
people are analyzing a little bit more. Some people go for the motor learning, some people don't go for it quite as much. You know, why are we doing more scrimmaging? Why are we doing more drills? And there's a huge debate those two things. So in the early days, people were just excited to be learning volleyball, and especially from all these other people that I consider my mentors, and I consider some of the greats, and I guess most people consider them greats. Bill Neville was another one of them.
39 years coaching the same institution. That doesn't happen anymore, too. Why?
No, it doesn't. And I think that's one of my biggest accomplishments in life.
I agree. I know, I agree. I think that we, and you can see that because sports is a microorganism or what we are as a society, but you spending all this time with one organization, and devoting yourself to that development. Um, what did it take for you to grow the sport throughout that program? And then number two, how do you deal with Title IX issues of things that we might be taking for granted now?
Well, going back through sort of my history in those early days, one, I feel incredibly lucky to actually have been able to be one of the pioneers from a coaching standpoint, because I often think today it would be really fun for me to be an athlete today, because to me, the athletes have everything. They might not look at it like that, but for me, when I was playing on the national team, we weren't even given a pair of shoes. I mean, we got nothing. We had to give our uniforms back, everything. So
Agree.
yeah, so when I started coaching, it was just the beginnings of women's sports. And in fact, one of the things, we had punch and cookies that we gave to the other teams after the match. And I hated that when I first, because if we lost, I just didn't even want to see that team again. Just get out of the gym. And if we won, I wanted to celebrate with my team. And so that's the level of competitiveness that I saw when I first walked into the gym.
Mhm. Do you bring that also to your players? Like, how do you make that sentiment of being competitive contagious within your players?
Well, at the very beginning, there were those players, but they never had an opportunity to realize that ambition. So when I came in, they were thrilled. I had come from the World Championships in Bulgaria. I could at that time still demonstrate things, so they were really impressed with that. But they were competitive. They asked for more practices. They loved practices, and they were really good. In our first 2 years, the first year we won 1 game. And of course, we only played 6. And the game that we won was by default. And I was still excited, happy to win that match. And the next year we won 2. So we doubled and we actually won those. And then after that, we started winning. And one of the reasons we won was because of their competitiveness. They were competitive, but they never had an opportunity to become really good at their sport. So that was really fun.
So how do you define being competitive? Because we're talking a lot about being competitive and being tough. Like, how do you define that? Like, how do we make it not subjective or something that maybe we can get close to measuring?
Well, I think it's hard to measure, but you can see it in the behaviors that an athlete exhibits. I'm surprised sometimes when I go to a tournament, which we would love to be able to go to right now, but you go to a junior tournament and maybe you see a ball fall in front of somebody and you're wondering, why didn't that person go for the ball? And I remember when I was trying out for the national team, I would run into a wall. I would run up the bleachers. I would do anything to impress someone so that they would want to choose you. So just the behavior of always doing everything possible to be your very best. And I think defense is one thing that shows your competitiveness, because you just do not want to let that ball fall. But the behaviors that they exhibit, doing more than they have to do, maybe asking you, what can I do to be better? In doing a drill that maybe physically isn't as demanding, they make it more physically demanding. And every ball that they play is important. And one of my players said one time, the game is so different because you don't have a second chance, but in practice you have this whole bucket of balls, and you make a mistake, hey, there's always another one. But those great competitive athletes, they never give up. They slam their hand on the ground, they get mad, they yell. because they're so upset that they didn't do something right. So I think we can see in their behaviors, and if you don't see it and don't recognize it, they probably didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
The level that you were expecting, or the level that you want, that you consider. Because I say, like, a competitive person is going in the revolving door second and coming out first.
So another Hall of Fame coach came to our program and was mentioning that he has one of the best teams in the nation right now, and he was mentioning how he feels that he didn't, for example, he didn't win this year as much as he wanted to because he was missing that type of player. Do you feel that because in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was more task oriented, it was easier to create or to help embrace and improve a competitive player?
I really believe that for the most part, if you're competitive, you're competitive, and you're competitive in every single thing that you do. I remember my assistant coach and I, we would run up the stairs to the cafeteria trying to beat the other one. And we were doing just going up the stairs, but everything we did, we were competing, with each other. And competitive nature, I was always complimented in the 80s when my teams did really well. What are you doing, because you have so many competitive players? I provided an atmosphere for them, and I was very, very demanding. And if the players didn't like that, then, they usually would leave. We didn't cut players, but you need to be demanding and provide that atmosphere for them and have very high goals. But I do believe it's sort of innate. You can bring out a little more in them, but they have it. And a story, when we were at the Air Force Academy with a player, we had been ranked #1 in the country, but we found ourselves in the 3rd and 4th place match. And one of our players that did become player of the year, she just decided we were going to win. And we weren't playing very well, but she wanted to win, and she did everything. And we ended up winning. The third place match, and we had to take her to the emergency room at the hospital because she had expended all her energy. She had nothing left. She passed out. We had to give her IVs and things, but that is the true, competitive nature that, that I didn't give her. She had.
Volleyball, badminton, track and field, softball, basketball. Okay, you did all those sports at the highest level. How is your concept of being a multi-sport athlete right now? Do you feel that it influences in a positive way the capability of a student athlete or just an athlete in general?
Well, we definitely feel, and this is a USA comment also, but the multi-sport athlete, and especially that multi-sport athlete as a younger player, you just develop your motor skills at much higher levels. So your ceiling is much higher than it would be for an athlete that plays a single sport. And especially if you can get that athlete as their central nervous system is developing, by 11, 12, 13, that they have all those skills. And I was very fortunate because in those days, the seasons were really short. So you went from one sport to the next. I played a couple sports during one season, but you just went from one to the next. And I think it's just a shame that schools and clubs, many of them are not allowing athletes to be in more than one sport because of the need for them to specialize and get better. And I think one of the issues, one, they're much better athletes. Two, the single sport athlete and specializing is creating a lot of overuse injuries. And we see that a lot in the colleges, because by the time we get the athlete, they've already had some different problems, and it's very difficult to deal with those things because it takes the overuse injury to appear. And then the later you get the athletes, the more you're you are the one that has to deal with that. So multi-sport athletes give not only the athlete a higher level of play, but it keeps them a lot healthier.
Do you, I remember in the 80s and 90s, me overplaying, over competing, even when doing multiple sports, we were doing more than we were supposed to probably, but we didn't see many injuries. I think that big difference have been that we were always in the streets, like doing activities. Do you feel that technology has played a big role on how sedentary the newer athlete is, and that then reflects into the lack of more skill development?
I definitely think it's a complex issue that there is a lot of reasons for it. I was excited just during the COVID to see more people in the streets, playing. I don't usually see people in the streets and in their backyards and doing different things on their own. But a problem is a great benefit to our sport has been clubs, because they have given us a much higher level of coaching and a higher level of player. But at the same time, those clubs are not allowing players to play oftentimes more than one sport, and parents are used to taking their children to clubs, not only for the volleyball, but then for jump training and conditioning and nutrition and all these different things. And so it's really taken away from just the ability to be doing multiple things on your own.
You are a CAP instructor, an FIVB instructor. You have been mentoring people in more than 35 countries around the world. I want to start by asking you, in the US, what do you think that has worked in the CAP, with the CAP certifications, in terms of educating people that maybe other countries can learn from? And then my second question is, what have you learned from going to all these 35 countries?
Well, the CAP program came in around 1985. And we had started doing volleyball camps around the country, but we didn't have a USA specific program. And what we wanted, and Bill Neville and I think Carl McGowan and Doug Beal were the big initiators of that program. We wanted everyone, no matter where they lived in the country, to have the opportunity to play volleyball and to play at a high level. And we needed coaches to be able to do that. So, and we actually, I think, followed Val Keller, who was one of my early USA coaches who's passed away. But there was a program in Canada, an accreditation program in Canada, and I still have many of those level 1 and level 2 books from their accreditation program. But that program has given the whole country the ability to learn volleyball at a high level and give lots of coaches and players that opportunity. When I first started coaching, if we played a team in nationals from another part of the country, we won even though they were better than we were, because as soon as they knew we were from California, we got half the points, just they were intimidated. And after a while, that whole thing changed, because now volleyball is great all over the country, and I credit USA Volleyball for doing a great deal of that.
Growing the sport in women, as a woman, can you tell me what has been done right and what do we have room to improve? Because talking to all these coaches through Volley Junkies, I did get worried about the role of women coaches at the highest levels, so around the world, pro league, national teams. So I want to know, how do you see that role of women in sports? And then again, things that we can do better.
Everything is a slow process. And with Title IX, I'm answering some of the questions that you asked before, but in 1972 with Title IX, and we just had the 48-year anniversary of Title IX on June 23rd, but that gave women the opportunity to compete, girls and women. And before that time, most men or organizations felt that women didn't want to be involved. And once Title IX came through and women were given the opportunity, you know, sports just expanded tremendously. And I got to be a part of that with Title IX. And then and then with AIAW, the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women, that started championships for women. And then women were just all over. They wanted to be involved, and there were tons of women coaches. So the majority of coaches, 90%, were women before Title IX, and then after Title IX, until the NCAA in 1982 offered championships for women, which in the end was a great thing, because they had the power and prestige and could offer the women's programs more than we could offer at the time. But then all of a sudden, like my university, I was an assistant athletic director for the women's program. Once the NCAA began the programs, then men pretty much took over the athletic positions. And that's when all of a sudden, you know, women were fewer of the coaches and men became the majority. So, you know, now there's 30% women coaching rather than 90%. But I still see progress being slowly getting better and better, because the programs for women now are awesome. They can get better. There's still problems, but so many girls and women are participating. And unfortunately, because of some of the changes, women aren't coaching as much. And I think we need to get more women involved. And I think more women will be involved. But one of the biggest problems is the demand of the job. It's year round, it's time consuming, and it's really unhealthy, not only for the women having difficulty doing it with the family, but for men. So I think the biggest change that needs to be made is that it's fewer hours, just a little more family friendly. And I think we really can do that. But so far, you know, we haven't done that as well as we could. And unfortunately, we've lost some really wonderful women coaches because of the demand for the job, but also because in today's world, women have lots of opportunities in business and in other areas. So we're not just losing it because we're doing something wrong in volleyball. I think it's because other people are doing things right. They're snatching all our good athletes.
No, and Kirsten Burton Booth was mentioning, the coach from Creighton University was mentioning that part of, you know, what she thought that was difficult to increase the number of women in big time programs, it's the recruiting calendar. It's really demanding. And that she felt personally that, you know, that was one of the biggest difficulties in this matter, to probably see more women in those positions.
Yeah, and I think that when we're talking about these positions, we're usually talking about Division I, NC2A Division I. Mm-hmm. Right after I retired, I was an assistant coach for 3 years at Pomona Pitzer at the Claremont Colleges, a Division III institution. And I really loved it, because I thought that was how we began. When I started, sports were a part of the university and an educational opportunity and an experience for them where they could play a sport, stay fit, get a little bit of recreation, you know, healthy mentally, but still be a part of the university from an academic sense at a high level. And I think Division III is a wonderful place to coach, where you don't have the same stresses as you do at Division I, and Division II is another opportunity. So I think sometimes people think that the best coaches go to Division I or should go to Division I, but I'm really a proponent of great coaches being at all these institutions. And I think there's a lot of great coaches and a great women coaches that people don't know just because they're not at that higher level and they don't get the PR. that maybe they get at the other institutions.
Man, you're so right about this, and including you, you're a Hall of Fame coach in division. You know, coming from a Division II program, and you're so right about that. That we mainly focus on one thing, you know, on one division, and not looking at the big picture of maybe some other positions offers more flexibility for many, you know, communities to be part of.
And junior colleges are part of that also.
Yes.
But a common theme that I hear all the time that I'd like to make a comment on is that there are no Division I females that have won an NCAA Division I championship. And I really see that whole picture from a different light. So sure, I would love to have a woman, you know, win the championship in Division I. But, you know, I won it at Division II, and two of them. And
tell them, Sue. Tell them.
Yes, in the 39-year history of NCAA having championships in Division II, 11 women have won.
Wow.
11 times. And one of my former players, I'll give her a plug, Kim Chernus, who's at San Bernardino State. She won one last year, and I was so excited for her to win that. But Division II, we've had quite a number of women that have won. And in Division III, Terry Clemens won 6 in a row and 7 total. And, you know, she did a great job. So I think we should promote and give recognition to women coaches at other levels that have won. And it's just a matter of time before they'll win at that Division I level. But also one other thing, Denise Corlett has Stanford for 31 years.
Amazing.
And the mainstay of that program, from my standpoint, through Don Shaw, John Dunning, and now with Kevin Hamley. And she has won 9 championships. and I'm not sure how many she won as a associate head coach, which she now is. But she was the person that was there through those 9 championships.
Absolutely. No, and Denise,
she won.
Coach Corlett, which retired this year. It's also one of those cases that, as you say, she stayed consistent even with coaching changes. That's how good she was. Yeah. You know, no matter who came in, she was there. She was the rock, you know, and she was someone that was an amazing recruiter, you know, so I think that much recognition to her, that who has, as you say, won many championships in Division I volleyball. Sue, question, and of course, I don't know for people to know, Sue speaks almost perfect Spanish, so we were going to do this interview in Spanish, but we decided to do it in English. But speaking of that, Sue, minorities, you know, like people from different countries, minorities, like what are we doing right, and what can we do better for the growth of the sport? I have to say that the documentary that USA Volleyball created along with Off the Block about the growth of men's sports talk a lot about that. So I was really inspired by that small documentary. And actually, if you haven't watched it, for the people out there, please go and visit USA Volleyball Facebook page or any social media and watch that documentary. It's like 25 minutes and it's outstanding. But tell me a little bit about that, about the growth of minorities in our sport.
When people talk about discrimination in volleyball, for the most part, I think it's just an unintentional bias. So like if you talk about a lot of reasons why women, for example, aren't involved as much in coaching, I think it's unintentional. It's just a cultural situation that allows men to be involved a little bit more, because women grow up with men coaches. Many women athletes have never even had a female coach. And so as far as just getting women involved, I think it's more the bias. I'm not sure with the problem with getting more Black athletes and Black women coaches. We definitely have a problem getting more, you know, Black female athletes involved in volleyball. It's an expensive sport. We have not done a good job to the inner cities, into areas where they really can't afford as much, you know, how much clubs cost. And so we are losing so many great female athletes because we are not doing enough for them. So we need to have programs like the Starlights, who offer programs for Black athletes that that can't afford those more expensive clubs. So if we offer more opportunities, just like we offered more opportunities for women when Title IX began, we need to find ways of offering those opportunities to, you know, Black athletes. And we are really missing the boat not doing that. So hopefully that will be a bigger program. I know we're trying to do that, but we haven't done a very good job. And if you look at Black female coaches, it's just the same thing. Where are their role models? If you don't have role models, you're not gonna even think about, you know, becoming a coach yourself. You're just gonna think it's a forbidden thing to do, or you just never actually even think about it. And our media doesn't help, because there's little media coverage for women in general. If it's invisible, you know, you're not thinking about it. So internationally, some countries do a great job now, but it's the third world countries, the countries that are poor, that struggle with this. FIVB has done a good job getting coaches out to those third world countries to help teach. But what I have found, unfortunately, is the organization programs in a lot of these countries, it's behind, and you need the organization and different levels of programs for young people. But in these countries, and especially in the Caribbean, where you're from and where I spent a lot of time, in other countries, there's not the push to help females especially, and there's a huge problem with no after school activities, and the kids just get in trouble because they don't have anything to do. So hopefully the organization of programs will get better. And I had, this is the answer to the question you asked quite a long time ago, but what have I gotten out of, you know, all these international programs is, one, I have really learned what it's like to be in another country. And I'm grateful the opportunities that I've had here, and I really want to help the people in other countries to have better opportunities. I was in Honduras with a State Department program that John Kessel put together, and it was in the Bay Islands, and we worked with hundreds of underprivileged kids and at-risk kids to try to give them opportunities of some other options to choose. And it was one of the most rewarding trips that I have made, because not only were we involved as coaches, but the State Department, the embassy in Honduras was available to help kids make good choices, talking about what are the dangers of the internet, what are the dangers of different things, and what should you choose instead of choosing some of the things that are just going to get you in trouble later on. So I think we can do a lot as human beings to bring peace and to help other people. And unless you've been there, you just don't know how difficult it is in a lot of other countries.
So shifting gears here, I want to know what inspired you. You know, it maybe had changed throughout time, but what gives you that fire inside of you to continue to give to the sport that you love?
I think it's like being competitive. I don't know why. I've always had this motivation, and I've always enjoyed working with people, the boys and the girls. And I think the easiest example is what makes you happy? What are the highlights that you've had in your career? And of course, winning a national championship or creating some All-Americans, those are all important. But years ago, we gave a volleyball clinic for the YWCA. and we had hundreds of little girls in the gym. And mother came up to me and she said, I have never seen my daughter smile so much. She's just having such a great time. And that was just a highlight. And Bruce Nelson, I guess, sees this highlight every day.
Rudy's awesome, by the way, as well. So
yeah, that's what makes it important for you to see young ladies and young men grow as people, to mature, to help them along that pathway a little if you can. And volleyball's the avenue to do that. It's not, and it's probably one of the bigger things that you're doing, because the sport's going to last a certain amount of time, but the things that they take away from your program is going to last hopefully forever.
So tell people what you've been doing from in the last 8 or 9 years. Something. What are you coaching right now?
Yeah. So I'm coaching boys high school volleyball at Claremont High School, and I'm the assistant coach, and I love it. And it definitely took me a while to figure out how to be an assistant coach, and I admire all of the assistant coaches today, because it's a much harder job than I ever realized, and I better head coach helping my assistants. But I finally learned not to say everything I thought, and work with my head coach. And
I need to work on that.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll jump up thinking I'm the head coach, and I'm going, oops, I'm not the head coach anymore. But coaching the boys has been a real pleasure. And I had worked at the university with the men's team for 5 years, and I've done the Maccabiah games for the Jewish athletes in Israel at the Maccabiah games. And so I coached internationally with the men on that team. But I love working with the guys. They are so enthusiastic and somewhat crazy, but they love playing. And sometimes I've learned that sometimes you have to be really, really demanding with them, and sometimes you just have to go along with them and just have a good time and let them enjoy the sport. And I think that definitely changed from how I normally coached, being just really, really pretty serious and pretty demanding. But I think it's really important today that especially the boys that we're trying to get more involved in the sport, they have to really have fun, and you can create a lot of ways for them to have fun while still being demanding. And one of the players, a middle blocker who always was taken out of the back row, and he just always begged the coach, hey, I want to serve, let me serve. And then in practice he would serve, and he would just be goofing around, and the balls would hit the walls and the ceiling. And I finally went up to him and I just said, hey, why are you doing this? I mean, you're pretty good, but coach looks at this and coach says, never putting that guy in. And I said, why are you doing it? And he says, because it makes me happy.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, well, hard to argue.
What can you do?
Yeah, right.
I love it. And biggest reward of knowing that you're retired, you have no obligations, basically, you're doing this almost as a hobby, but it's also your job. What's the biggest reward that this past 8 years or 9 years have given you?
Well, fortunately for me, I've still been given a few rewards, which I always think, oh, well, where did that come from? But getting a few, and actually, hey, being on this show with you, that's a huge reward.
It's an honor for me to have you here.
Well, me too. But I've fortunately been involved the last 8 years. The most recent place that I've gone was the Honduras trip, but before that was to Fiji doing an FIVB course. So I'm still been involved with that and with USA Volleyball, teaching around the country. And it's really rewarding when people say, I have your book, or autograph the book. And I've written 2 books, and it's possible I might write another one. I enjoy doing that. So I have been very, very fortunate in my life to constantly get those little compliments, and wow, you you live on those things. It's really nice. But I've stayed involved in being involved with high school volleyball, and going back to my college team, and seeing them play. And so that, but one other big project that I've had, and if it wasn't for COVID, if you have to think of one good thing that happened with COVID for me, I pretty much put together a history of 39 years of coaching at UC Riverside. And it's my thoughts of developing the program from pretty much nothing to, to today, what the program is like, with photos of the All-Americans, with photos,
Wow.
Things that have happened. And it's been laborious for sure. It's taken a long time, but it's almost put together, and just my thoughts about the years and the program. So
what is the name of that book? What's the name?
Well, I don't have a name for it right now. It's just Reflections of Coach Sue.
Okay, I have a title for you: Reflection of Coach Sue in Times of the Flu. I think that it could be something like that, where, as you say, this is a really hard times, and at least it has given us some time to reflect and actually look back and put some stuff together.
Yeah, so I'm going through a lot of the UCR things. I have a lot of volleyball tapes. I want to have a good match to show in years to come if somebody wants to see them. And the technology is always changing, so they're on VHS tapes. They need to be on DVD, but then they need to be on YouTube. Who knows where they need to be? So all those things take time, and this unfortunately is giving me that time.
So what are some of the advices that you have for people that are wanting to maybe go into college coaching, and then people that are wanting to maybe become instructors like you as well?
Well, the more you do at the beginning, and a lot of it is volunteer coaching, you just have to be involved. And eventually you have doing high performance volunteering to do things for USA Volleyball. You just got to get your name out there. It doesn't really matter the level that you start at, but I'm always amazed when I didn't have any problem, because when I was young and played all the sports, they wanted a female athlete to coach at UC Riverside, and I had competed against them as an athlete. So they just said, apply for the job. I applied, I got it. 39 years later, here I am. Longer than that now. So I didn't have to do anything. So now I see young coaches at a very bottom level, and they go, I want to coach in USA Volleyball. And I'm thinking, no way, it's just too hard. You're never going to make it. And then they do it. So I applaud all of you that have had to do it the hard way when I had to do it the easy way. But it's just, if you can't get involved any other way with a really good paying job, you just have to volunteer. And if you have enough passion, and that's what it takes, you'll eventually be able to get in. So I guess that's my advice.
How do you want people to remember you in the sport of volleyball? When you retire, retirement of all retires. When you finally retire from the sport per se, what do you want to be remembered, Sue?
Well, I never thought about it while I was involved. And as you get older and as you see all the different changes, you really realize that I guess I was part of that pioneer group that did do a lot at the very beginning to get volleyball a little bit to where it is. I mean, tons of other people have done as much or more than I have, but I played my little part.
Yes, you
I
did.
am proud of that. And so I guess just, being involved in helping the growth of not only volleyball, but a little bit to helping the growth of women's sports, and being someone who really loved that involvement and very honored to have had that opportunity. My timing was perfect, because even though I missed it as an athlete, as a coach, I was in from the very beginning. And because of that, I was offered different opportunities that today would be much harder to obtain. So.
So any new projects that are coming up, hopefully after things go back to the new normal or whatever normal is going to look like?
Well, hopefully I will be back on the court with the boys team. USA Volleyball is restructuring now the CAP program because of all the financial issues. And so we're going to have a meeting next week about the direction maybe that might be going. I enjoy being involved with that. I enjoy writing. So just maybe I will continue to be involved in some way. I can't see myself ever not being involved, but hopefully I'll find a way.
Can you tell people what are the titles of your books and where can they find it?
Well, now they are out of print. So the way you find them is on Amazon, which has everything. Volleyball, what is it? Championship volleyball, drill, technique and drills. That's it. And the other one is
bestseller,
Coach and Survival Guide. Yeah.
And which is or have been used in the CAP certifications as well for the people involved with USA Volleyball, and everyone to know. Hey Sue, and then aside from volleyball, what is your main hobby? What do you do?
Try to stay fit during this time period, and I'm so excited that our club finally opened up. So I am swimming in the Olympic pool, doing laps.
What? Wow.
Yeah. Besides, walking, hitting a few tennis balls, and staying active is huge. Just reading a lot, reading a little in Spanish, trying to learn Italian. So I'm reading a book in Italian right now, a cheap novel, and easiest to learn from.
Hey Sue, tomorrow I'm gonna have an Italian coach speaking to me in the program in Italian. Well, actually, what day is today? Today's Saturday. On Monday, I'm gonna have him, and I'm gonna be speaking in Spanish. So that's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be the Lube Volley head volleyball coach. He's one of the best coaches in the world, and I'm excited about it. But I'm also nervous. Any advice for me for that interview?
Oh, it'll be easy. You do such a great job. You come up with great questions. You did a great job with Bernardo, and that's one of the best coaches, or the best coach in the world. So you don't have anything to worry about.
Thank you. This has been Sue Gozansky. On behalf of everyone in the volleyball community, I want to thank you for being a pioneer. You are a change agent, and someone to dare to make a difference when it matters the most. And you're one of the reasons that volleyball is so popular, not just in the US, but around the world as well. And for people watching, if you did not know about Sue Gozansky because you're not from the US, please Google her, learn more about her and from her. Her books are amazing. One of the most important tools that people use for education here in the US. And as she was explaining, she's part of that group of pioneers like Doug Beal, Bill Neville, and other greats that dare to make the difference for our sport that we love, not just in the US, but around the world. So on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for what you keep doing for the game. And that you're truly, truly inspiring because you're also a master learner.
Thank you so much, and good luck with your season. I hope everything goes great for you.
Gracias, Sue. Cuídate mucho.
Okay, igualmente.
Okay, and tomorrow we have another very special guest, so please tune in, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching. Please know that you can find our videos on YouTube. So I'm gonna upload this video soon on YouTube on the Volley Junkies page and also on our Facebook page. Thanks again, everyone.
Okay, ciao.